Hello, you're listening to On Israel, Al Monitor's podcast. I'm Ben Caspit from Tel Aviv. Anxiety in Israel ahead of the US presidential elections is particularly strong, as it is in China, Russia, Iran, and Saudi Arabia. Many in Jerusalem are biting their nails, knowing that the identity of the next American president will have a direct and tremendous impact on Israel itself, on its neighborhood, on geostrategic developments that affect it, and on many other aspects of current and future life. Israelis are split on the issue more or less like Americans, with right-wing voters, mostly supporters of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, backing Donald Trump, and center-left ones preferring Joe Biden. Bottom line, if the elections were being held in Israel, they would be a cakewalk for Trump. And how? The gifts that Trump has showered on Israel and on Netanyahu over the past 4 years have done the job. Many Israelis are convinced the red-haired commander-in-chief is the best thing that has ever happened to their country. As always, Israel's top echelons are careful to avoid the appearance of meddling in American politics, although it doesn't take a genius to guess who Benjamin Netanyahu would like to see in the Oval Office for the next 4 years. In the highly publicized three-way phone call between Trump, Netanyahu, and the ruler of Sudan a week ago, Bibi almost fell into a trap that would have gotten him into a lot of trouble when Trump asked him whether he thought Sleepy Joe could have achieved the same Middle East peace results. But Netanyahu has been around long enough. He mumbled something non-committal and emerged in one piece. Hopefully, this week will put an end to all the speculations and alternative scenarios of the past year. A Trump-Biden tie or a constitutional crisis in Washington would be a nightmare for many in Washington, Jerusalem, and the Middle East. Our guest today is a senior Israeli diplomat who is well grounded in US-Israel relations and has played an active role in shaping ties between Washington, New York, and Jerusalem. Dan Gillerman served as Israeli ambassador to the UN for over 5 successful years, from 2003 to 2008. He was considered very close to Israel's mythological defense and foreign minister, the late President Shimon Peres, and is well connected in top political and business circles in the US and elsewhere. Today, Gillerman is chair of Markstone Capital Group, Israel's largest private equity fund. He splits his time between Tel Aviv, New York, and European capitals and countries to follow developments on the Washington-Jerusalem axis. He joins us right after this short break.
If you're listening to this podcast, you obviously care about the Middle East, and if you do, you should probably be reading Al Monitor. Al Monitor is a global newsroom headquartered in Washington, D.C., with a network of over 160 contributors around the world. Al Monitor offers first-class reporting and analysis from a range of perspectives and an approach that represents the highest journalistic standards, as well as an award-winning commitment to press freedom and independence. If you haven't done so already, visit us at almonitor.com, check out our articles, and sign up for our free newsletters. There's a lot to choose from, including the Week in Review, an essay that offers unusual insights and forecasts into the region based upon Al Monitor's outstanding reporting. And if you haven't done so, please subscribe to our Al Monitor podcast on your favorite podcast platform, on Israel with Ben Caspit, and on the Middle East with me, Andrew Parasolidi.
Now we say shalom to Dan Gillerman, Israel's former ambassador to the United Nations, and thanks, Danny, for joining On Israel, the Al Monitor podcast. Shalom.
Shalom. Hi, Ben. Always great to be with you.
Thank you. Now let's start diving into the November 3rd. It's this Tuesday, a major event vis-a-vis our area, Israel and the Middle East. And my first general question is, how do you see the tense expectations in the Middle East ahead of November 3rd? To what extent will the results impact the Middle East as a whole?
Well, I think the expectations are great because, in a way, decisions taken in Washington and what happens in the United States affects our region even more than local decisions taken here. I'm always reminded of the famous story about our late Prime Minister Levi Eshkol, who was told there was a drought. And he said, "Oh, no, where?" And they said, "Here in the Negev." And he said, "Oh, thank God, I thought maybe in the United States, in America." So, what happens, the decisions taken there, the future, the next 4 years in Washington and the United States will have great effect on our region. And therefore, I think there is this great expectation. And there's also great tension because these are very close elections. And by the way, I don't think we'll even know on Wednesday morning who the next president of the United States is, whether it's Donald Trump, who will continue for another 4 years, or Joe Biden, who will take over.
Yes, it is going to be maybe a long night and maybe a long week, and we hope not more than this. But let's now go into more to details. To what extent will the identity of the next president affect the clash between the two competing blocs in the Middle East, the Shiite Iran axis and the more pragmatic Sunni axis, which contains now Israel?
I think that whether it's Joe Biden or Donald Trump, we will see a continuation of the support and the ever-growing involvement as far as the Sunni Arab countries are concerned. We've seen in the last few weeks several important Sunni countries, whether it's the Emirates, Bahrain, and now Sudan, which is sort of a mix between Sunni and Shia. And apparently, and quite likely, there are more countries to join. And I think this trend, in any case, will continue. Although I believe that maybe even if Biden is reelected, and which may be even more surprising, even when Trump is reelected, there will be a closer dialogue, I believe, also between the United States and Iran. I think that secretly, maybe not so secretly, Trump's real desire is to try and reach a deal with Iran. And I think the Iranians, also because of their dire economic situation, would be willing to go that way. So I think that what we will see in the future is an ever-growing flow of Sunni Muslim countries, Arab countries, making peace or at least reaching agreements of normalization with Israel, and maybe even less of an engagement or even a war, at least a war of words between the Western world and the Shia world.
It's very interesting what you just said, because I understand that you assume that this trend, like you called it, between Israel and Arab or Sunni countries, is not dependent on the identity of the next president. It has its own life. But the other thing you said, and you just jumped my next question, is that any president, whether it will be Biden or Trump, will negotiate with Tehran in order to reach a renewed or new nuclear agreement. And so I will ask you that, who do you think the Iranians are preferring? And it's very easy to say they prefer Biden, but I think it's more tricky than this, because you saw Trump with the Kim Jong-un in North Korea. He was acting like, or talking like a lion, and in the end he fell like a flea. So what do you think Ayatollah Khamenei is thinking to himself? Who will he prefer?
Strangely, I think that the Iranians would actually be interested in a Trump victory. I know that sounds against all odds, and it sounds very very surprising. But I think, Trump is so eager for a real big deal. I mean, what he did with the Emirates and some of the other countries is very nice and very important, and I'm not taking it lightly. But he wants to win the Nobel Peace Prize, and I think that some kind of arrangement with Iran will guarantee him that. On the other hand, the Democrats and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will also be quite moderate as far as the Iranians are concerned. They will want a new agreement. They may go back to the original agreement, which Joe Biden was a party to, together with Barack Obama. So I think that although it sounds like a very crucial outcome for Tehran, I think they'll be happy if Biden beats Trump, because Trump has been quite offensive towards them. But secretly, they may even think, if Trump wins, maybe we'll be able to reach some kind of deal. Because at the end of the day, for Trump, it's all about economics and all about business. And the Iranians need a lot of economic help and a lot of business. And they think that with Trump, they can probably make a deal. So I think, quite honestly, if I were the Ayatollah, and I'm not, and I have no wishes to be, I would be quite content either way.
I think I tend to agree with you, because it will be the President Trump's second term, and if you remember, he calls himself the deal maker, and I think he will go with full speed towards an agreement. I want to ask you, Dan Gillerman, during the Trump years, many analysts and politicians expressed concern about the erosion of U.S. bipartisan support for Israel. It started under Obama, when Netanyahu addressed a joint session of Congress, and continued the full swing with the alliance Trump and Netanyahu forged. Do you think a Trump re-election would deepen divisions with the Democrats? And would the Biden victory fix them? Or are we in for some democratic revenge over Israel's dedication to Trump?
Well, I think that's a very, very important point, because I think that one of the biggest dangers to Israel is the fact that American support for Israel, support of the president, the Congress, or the Senate, has, the biggest asset we had was that support was always bipartisan, totally across the aisle. It really didn't matter who was in the White House and who controlled the Hill. The support for Israel was totally bipartisan. In the last few years, to a great extent, because of the policy of Prime Minister Netanyahu, and which came to a head really with his going to the Congress against the Iran deal, behind the back and against the interests of the President of the United States, of a Democratic president and a Democratic Senate. He really turned the relationship and the support into a totally partisan support, and has to a great extent even alienated parts of the Democratic Party, and by the way, parts of the Jewish community as well. And I therefore think that if President Trump continues, is reelected, that void and that divide will be become even greater. And on the other hand, I think if Joe Biden is elected, Joe Biden is historically a great friend of Israel, as is Kamala Harris. As, by the way, is most of the Democratic Party. People like Omar and AOC and others are on the fringe, on the left fringe, together with Bernie Sanders to a certain extent. But that's not the real Democratic Party. So I think that in a way, if Joe Biden is elected, there may be a chance with people like Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and others to heal that divide and to bring back the bipartisan support for Israel, which I think the loss of which is very, very crucial and very dangerous to Israel.
Again, you just addressed my next question, because I wanted to ask you about if the return of the Democrats could endanger Israeli interests, given the rise of relatively radical forces in the party, such as Congresswomen Ilhan Omar and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and you just said that you don't think it's still a major or substantial force within the Democrats, but given the fact that President Biden is supposed to bring back the old American thinking about, recognizing the Green Line, not recognizing Jerusalem, looking at the West Bank settlements as illegal. Don't you think that all these combined with those congresswomen can cause a lot of problems on the line between Jerusalem and Washington?
I'm not so sure. First of all, I really don't think that Biden administration will go back on many of the things which the Trump administration initiated. I don't think they'll go back on Jerusalem. I don't think they'll go back on even the Golan Heights. They may be far tougher on settlements, but we already saw that the whole idea of annexation has been dropped aside as a result of the peace deals or normalization arrangements we've reached with the Emirates and other Arab countries. So also American administrations usually don't go back and don't cancel the decisions of previous administrations unless they're totally different to their point of view. I think that whoever is elected, and especially if Biden is elected, because with Trump we already have a great friend in the White House, whoever is elected will continue the friendship and the support of Israel, and at the end of the day, what's really important is who will be the best president for America. I'm reminded of a famous meeting between David Ben-Gurion, the first prime minister and the founder of Israel, and John F. Kennedy in 1962 at the Waldorf Astoria. It was scheduled to be a 30-minute meeting, and it turned out to be over 2 hours. And Kennedy was very impressed by Ben-Gurion, who was obviously a very impressive person. And he then accompanied him to the elevators. And before they parted, Kennedy said to Ben-Gurion, "Prime Minister, what can I do for Israel?" And David Ben-Gurion, in his wise way, said to him, "Mr. President, be a great president for America." And I think that at the end of the day, whoever will be a good or great president for America will also be good for Israel. So I'm really not worried. There's also one other point, and that is that the Jewish vote usually goes.
My next question, and you're doing it to me again, taking my question.
Okay.
So I ask it. I wanted to ask you, how do you explain President Trump's tremendous popularity among Israeli Jews, as opposed to the overwhelming support for Biden among American Jews?
I'll tell you, and I can tell you from personal experience. When I was at the UN in 2004, it was the second election for George W. Bush. George W. Bush was possibly the most pro-Israeli president the United States had. Maybe until Donald Trump, but even beyond that, because with him, it came from his heart. He was very, very, very supportive of Israel. George W. Bush got in 2004 less of the Jewish vote than either Reagan or Nixon. And I remember the next morning, I got a call from Karl Rove, who was the architect, as he was called, of Bush's campaign. And he said to me, "Mr. Ambassador, I can't use the word now, but expletive deleted, what does an American president have to do to get the Jewish vote?" And I spoke to many of my Jewish friends in New York, and I asked them, I said, "Look, when you go to the polls, isn't Israel important to you? Don't you, think about Israel?" They said, "Frankly, Israel is down the list, maybe number 5 or number 6 in our consideration when we go to vote. We care about the economy. We care about human rights. We care about abortion. We care about gay rights. These are the things that affect our daily life. And Israel does not play a major part in our decision when we vote. And as far as we are concerned, the Democrats are carrying out the things, or care about the things that we care about most. And that's why most Americans, and I think in many cases over 70, even 75% or more of the American Jews, to a great extent, most of them, except the very extreme Haredi ones, have always voted Democrats and will vote Democrats this time too.
So actually you're saying that traditionally Jews are liberals or Democrats. It's a genetic issue, not concerning the identity of any president. But you didn't answer the first part of the question about the tremendous popularity of Trump within Israeli Jews. And I want to add to this and ask you if the recent normalization agreements between Israel and key Sunni states prove that Trump was right all along on the Middle East, much more so than Obama.
Well, just to answer your previous question, Trump is a big hero in Israel. He's a reality star, and he's given us many, many gifts, which many Israelis cherish, including Jerusalem as our capital and moving the embassy to Jerusalem, and of course the Golan Heights. So Israelis see in him a real friend. I think they also like the fact that his daughter is Jewish and his grandchildren are Jewish, which makes him very popular in many parts of the Israeli society. But as far as the other part of your question was about
the events, the fact that the President Trump succeeded, to break the paradigm that caused all the Sunni states to wait to the Palestinian-Israeli track to be fulfilled. Now they are all abandoning the Palestinians. Now time suddenly is working not for the Palestinians, but for Israel. And maybe this is the results of the Trump administration agenda in the Middle East. And maybe, the way Trump came to the Middle East is more accurate than the way President Obama did.
Well, I think there's no doubt that the policy and the strategy which Donald Trump initiated and which Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, carried out to a great extent, proved to be right. And in a way, the writing was on the wall already for some time. We all felt for a long time, and I've been saying it for a long time too, that there is a new Arab and Muslim world consisting of moderate Arab and Muslim countries who finally realized that Israel is not their enemy and that the real threat to them emanates not from Jerusalem, but from Tehran. And that in fact, Israel can be their ally, both economically, technologically, but even militarily as an ally against the threat of Iran. They've been saying it in private meetings and they've been voicing that for a very long time. And I think at a certain point, they got fed up with the Palestinians, who as usual never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. And while we know that there isn't much love lost between the Arab world and the Palestinians anyway, when they were offered by this US administration a lot of benefits, including, in the case of Sudan, hundreds of millions of dollars and relinquishing their debts. And they said, okay, things have changed. And we have, for a few years already, regarded Israel not as an enemy. We have no dispute with Israel. We've given the Palestinians many chances. They have missed them all. And I think Trump, with Kushner and his team, used this sentiment and approaching this as another business deal. Because as you know, Trump wrote The Art of the Deal, and he, in a way, sees, I think, the whole conflict in the Middle East and the conflict between us and the Palestinians as a sort of real estate deal, which it isn't. I think he took advantage of that, and he managed to use that new sentiment, which has been apparent in the moderate Arab and Muslim world for some time, especially, when the real fight for supremacy and leadership in the Muslim world is between two countries who are not even Arab, and that's Turkey and Iran. And many of the moderate Arab and Muslim states are worried about that, and especially about Iran. Here they have the United States coming to them and saying, look, normalize relations with Israel, make peace with Israel, we'll deal with the Palestinians later. And they have accepted it. And I think that strategy proved to be right and proved to be the thing that really worked at the end of the day. And we'll now have to wait and see whether the Palestinians join this train, which to a great extent has already left the station, or miss it altogether, which will be a pity.
For closing up this issue, do you think that, I have two parts of this question, do you think that without the Iranian threat, could all this really happen? Because I think, my opinion is that the existence and the aspirations of Iran is the founding father of the whole process. And secondly, it's common to think that now the Palestinians will be very angry and maybe a third intifada. And so, but what do you think of the thesis that this can ignite a new generation of Palestinian leadership that will abandon the traditional approach of Arafat and Abu Mazen and understand that life matters? It's about time to start taking care about standard of living and education and economy, and maybe this will move them finally towards a real negotiation with Israel.
I think you're completely right here. I think that Iran was a very important factor. The threat of Iran, the extremism, the export of Iranian terrorism and their threat towards their neighbors, including the Emirates and the Saudis and many others, acted as a real catalyst in them agreeing to normalize relations with Israel and make Israel an ally and not an enemy. And as far as the Palestinians are concerned, I think that we'll probably have to wait for the day after Mahmoud Abbas or Abu Mazen. I don't think he can personally afford to change his intransigence position and all of a sudden give up all his statements. But I think that probably, and he's not a young person. And I think that whoever replaces him, whether it's someone who's in an Israeli jail or someone like Mohammed Dahlan, or at least, someone younger, will have both the authority and the reality of saying, look, we've been trying one way for so long, it didn't get us very far. We can have a state. We could have had a state had Abu Mazen agreed to Ehud Olmert's very generous proposal. We could have had a state if we had agreed to the Clinton and Barack parameters in 2000. We've missed it time and time again. Now all our neighbors and all the Arab countries are normalizing relations with Israel. We can't miss this train again. And I think the day after Abu Mazen, we will see a Palestinian leader who will decide that time has come to agree to a fair and hopefully long-lasting arrangement with Israel.
Ambassador Dan Gillerman, it was a pleasure and fascinating. I thank you very much for this talk. And we will take a small, very short break and come back right after it with some closures. Toda rabba. Thank you very much, Ambassador Gillerman.
Thank you, Ben. And let's wait and see what happens on Tuesday. It will be interesting.
With the whole world. Thanks.
I'm Andrew Parasiliti, president of the award-winning media news site El Monitor, where we cover the Middle East with some of the best reporters and columnists anywhere. And I'm excited to announce our new podcast, On the Middle East, where each week I will interview newsmakers from the U.S. and the region about the latest news and trends with additional commentary from our on-the-ground correspondents. Those of you who follow the region know that what happens in the Middle East doesn't stay in the Middle East. And to cite another great movie line, every time the U.S. tries to get out, the region pulls us back. Your time is valuable, so let me promise you this. You will learn something and you will never be bored, because each week we'll be talking with and listening to those leaders who are making the news and shaping the trends in this critical and fascinating region. So please subscribe to On the Middle East with me, Andrew Parasolidi.
Thank you for staying with us. A few highlights from the interesting conversation with Ambassador Dan Gillerman. First of all, he believes that the process or the trend of getting closer, Israel getting closer with the Sunni Arab or Muslim states in the Middle East will go on in any case, not dependent on the identity of the president in the Oval Office. Ambassador Gillerman thinks it will go on even if Biden will inherit Trump as president. He's worried about the relationship or the bipartisanship historical treaty of the American politics with Israel. He thinks that the Biden victory will heal the wounds between Israel and the Democratic Party. A Trump victory can widen the gap between Israel and parts of the Democratic Party. Ambassador Gillerman thinks that the future of the negotiation between Iran and the United States of America is not dependent on the identity of the president. He assumes that in any case, the next American president will try and engage with the Iranians to reach a new nuclear agreement between the superpowers and Iran. And if he was Ayatollah Khamenei, he would prefer Trump, because Trump, as Ambassador Gillerman says, will be on his second term. He is a deal breaker, and he will want very much to get maybe to the Nobel Prize, to get a Nobel Prize with a historic deal with Iran. That's it for today. Hope to see you next Monday on Israel, and I'll monitor. I'm Ben Caspit. Take care.